giving the word to Patric, who is going to.
It's not
Not,
necessary.
it's not a presentation.
Not
Presentation.
really, no.
It's really a
That's
talk.
just a
So.
thematical
Okay.
screenshot. So let's call this part why it took me 20 years to get into the Nethack dev team. And if you want to, hopefully it doesn't take that long anymore. So with these roguelikes and indie games, we have usually one developer. That's not yet a team. So you get a graphic guy, you get a sound guy, maybe a level designer, and then you have a team. So far, so easy. How do you get those people? You recruit them on the internet. They are usually players of your game, and they pop up and do stuff without being asked. And then you go and tell them, how would you like to join our team? With crawl, it is said that you just need to do one patch and then David Blog will come and grab you, so be careful. And we already heard how Dark got his people.
Minions, yeah.
Yes, minions. But you're not small and yellow.
No, but they are much more useful.
Yes, but with Nethack it was never this easy, and that's mostly historical. If you look at the history of Nethack, it's 35 years. If you take the time of its predecessors hack into it, which started 1982, 84 the first version of hack came out, 1985 the last version of hack was released, and then a year nothing happened. And then people got nervous and wanted all those cool patches that had been developed to get into the game. And Mike Stevenson got on Usenet and said, people, let's do, I could coordinate and make a new game and let's call it Nethack. That's a usual way how you do that. And but in those days, this was not considered something like, let's phrase it differently. This was just because nobody else was doing the job. And this is usually how open source starts. You have an itch, you scratch it, you put a patch or a completely new version out and people use it, and from then it starts going. And this is exactly how Nethack started, and it was one of the defining designs of Nethack that it was open source. Rogue itself was not open source. There is source code out there, and I think even in BSD they have one of the versions in the standard installation, but actually that's not open source. And Nethack got probably this popular because it was open source and everybody could hack on it, and the C programmers that came, and many learned C because they wanted to make patches for Nethack. So you see, that's not always a good thing if you are open source, but the time when Nethack was developed in a swiftly and in a the releases were many was from 87 when the first version came out to 96. And in that time, the dev team actually recruited people. As I said before, they made patches, they got recognized, and then they were invited. And after that, the releases were few because one of the main people who was doing the releases and had a vision for the game died. This was Meuller. He was a philosophy professor in the USA, and he and Mike were the two leading the project manager, so to speak. And from then on, it stayed more or less. The dev team didn't change anymore. It was just, well, they did what they were always doing. So, but the times changed, and so we got this strange image of a dev team that was doing stuff not openly, because at that time you didn't do it openly because there was no GitHub. There were no other repositories that were open. They didn't even use source control. They just sent the patches per mail, and actually did this until 2002. And then then they used CVS as a source control. So you see this all old historical baggage. But the community didn't stay on that there were lots of forks, and you got patches and people who done stuff, but they were no longer invited to the dev team. And fast forward to 2003, when the last release was done, and everybody was happy because a new release. But then for 10 years nothing happened. And then we, the fork developer, well, actually at that time I didn't think there would ever be another release, because, well, they just moved on. But now I know they didn't actually move on, they're just fossilized, more or less. But it's not a nice thing to say, because there were people in the dev team that were rather active and did stuff, but they were doing it more or less alone, and they were cut off of the community actually. So it was just not a good situation. And then Eric S. Raymond of open source lobbying fame was at the end of the 80s, he was doing some code for Nethack. For example, I think the blindfold was his idea. And 2014, he was doing some CVS to Git repository conversion tool. And then he also wanted to do this with the Nethack CVS repository. And because he knew one of the fork developer from unrelated work, he just popped up an IRC and said, hey guys, I have this repository of the secret Nethack code, would you have a look at it? Won't you see it? You can imagine we wanted to look at it, and but there was not that much to see. The gameplay changes were few. They changed a lot of the internal structures, but as we always suspected, there was not much of releasable code in there. They could have released it, but gameplay would have been more or less unchanged. Then this code also leaked in a different way, because we not only got the source code of Nethack, but also from the whole server around it, and there were personal information in it, and it was clear they couldn't release that, but it's not known how, but then the tarball of the Nethack source code was leaked, so everybody could have a look at it. And this actually this was important, as this caused a communication. We started a communication with the Nethack dev team. The years before, there were always guys who asked them, hey, can we help you with the release? Or can we do something to speed it up? Or what's the state at all? because they were rather uncommunicative at that time. But because of the source code leak, they actually got woken up and wanted to get new fresh blood. And this is actually what happened last year. 3 people got invited to the dev team, which must be 15 years after the last guy, I think. And me and the founder of Nethack 4 also got asked, but we both said, no, we can't, or at least we can't do it because we don't have time. We would like to, but if you just asked 5 years ago, but so this was, as I said, we don't have time, we can't do anything, so don't do it, because we don't want just to be a baggage, or we don't want to just have our name on the game. It's in the game anyway, because 3.60 was patched together with lots of code from the forks, of course, because it has to take 10 years of development that didn't went into this code to catch up with the forks. But this year they asked again, and this time I said, well, I don't think they will ask a third time, and if it's okay, well, I don't know if they, but I said I can't do the virgin thing and say, no, don't yet, wait another year. So this time I just, at first they sent some of the dev team members who's living in Switzerland to get me, actually. So I meet one of them in person, and it was a nice talk. Although he has said they are planning to passing the torch, and that scared me a little bit. But then afterwards I had a Skype talk with Mike Stevenson about the whole thing, and it was not passing the torch, but just fresh blood. And after I made it clear that at the moment I wouldn't be able to contribute code and only talk or join the discussion, so actually I answered their call, and now I am a dev team member who hasn't done anything yet, so I probably fit in. But at least the bug fix release is on the horizon, but with no code from me, or no code that I have written in the last year. Maybe code I have written the years before. So this time and we're actually not sure where it will go, but right now it's a little bit modernized. It starts to, we now have 3 people in it that are from the community of this millennium. So they are actually, they were part of the community and still are part of the community. So they see new people coming and doing something, they will get recognized. So now, if you are a programmer and do Nethack stuff, it's likely that you could get drafted. And so that's in a nutshell. So the Nethack dev team tries to be modern, as you can see that they have now a GitHub repository. So I can't make any promises, but I guess it looks better than it did 2 years ago. So that's at the moment is the current state of the Nethack dev team, and well, we'll see. It's, I guess, if you could have waited 10 years, you can wait another 10 and see what happens.
So Patric, first of all, congratulations on your ascension to the team.
Yeah, thanks.
You have been on the record as both recognizing that Soccerbarn is a source of poor gameplay and detracts from Nethack, but
Yes.
also acknowledging that you personally just quite enjoy
Yes.
playing through the Soccerbarn levels. Now that you are a member of the dev team, will the Nethack dev team have the balls to take hard, necessary decisions such as killing off Soccerbarn?
This is actually not the right question to ask me, because in Nethack I left it in it, so you should already know the answer. The only thing I did there was removing one of the levels, so it's only 3 levels deep and no longer 4. And
But you haven't cut it until it bleeds.
yes, I haven't.
It's not lore, it's L.
And we also have Derek Gray, who did Sporkhack on the team, and even he didn't cut it out of Sporkhack. So he always said he would have done it if it didn't leave a hole to be filled, and he didn't know what to fill it with.
Thanks for that.
So, can you hear me? Okay. 2 questions. First, he said you ascended. So, what was your ascension kit?
A beer and a microphone to talk to Mike Stevenson.
Okay, that's fine. And more to the point, did you ever, in the years past, dream of actually becoming a dev member someday?
It actually wasn't. I never actually thought about it, because when my first when I first played roguelikes, it was at the end of the 80s when I got my first computer. But at that time, Nethack didn't make a big impression on me, because there were LAN, Omega, Moria. I think I mostly played Moria and Hack Light at that time, both graphical versions, by the way. And only 10 years later, I met roguelikes again, and only then I got involved with Nethack, and this was already after it had its big development phases. So I actually didn't consider the dev team active for the most of my Nethack time. And for that reason, I actually never thought long about that. And when I did Nethack, the first 2 weeks, I just used patches that were available and easily applicable to the code, to see how far can you go from 3.43 to whatever you get when you apply all those sensible patches. And within 2 weeks, I had a better Nethack with not much work. So I always thought they could have done that themselves. Why didn't they do it? So, and I always was of the opinion they just waited until they retired to pick up again. After we've seen the commit history of Nethack from all those years, it's not quite that, but it was not this. It was that. So there were some people who did work on the code, but not much. And so they themselves never considered them to be unresponsive, because they always responded to mails. But the community had now different way of communication, so they actually weren't visible to the community and people outside of it.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up, actually. Nethack is like the antithesis of everything I explained earlier about communities.
Yes.
And I'm not sure there is much to comment, but it's funny to notice.
Yeah, it drifted over times. In the 80s and at the start of the 90s, you were on Usenet, and that was enough. or you responded to mail or something like that. But now Twitter, Facebook, GitHub itself is social coding. If you are an old fart who has no idea that these things exist, you are not visible to the people.
Somebody on Twitch is asking if Nethack is the game with the archaeologist in it.
Yes.
And many other weird things, including the kitchen sink. So
Yes, the tourist.
yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay.
And